Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new video. Today I wanted to go over one of my favorite types of items to flip. They are perfect for overnight flipping, or if you're going to be gone for maybe 8 to 10 hours. You're going to have way less competition over these types of items. The margins can still be very good. However, you're not going to be losing much money to margin checks, so it's really easy to find accurate prices for these items. These type of items are what I like to refer to as obscure high volume items. They are generally cheaper items, like under 10,000 GP each, and they do have significant volume when you compare it to high margin items, PVM items, stuff like that. However, the competition over them is generally extremely low. Just to give you some example items right off the bat here, they could be something like Taiba One-Eye Teleports, Essence Implanes, Giant Seaweed. I did Water Orbs were pretty good, Dragon Bolts Unfinished, Burnt Pages. Generally, they're going to be on the more expensive end of high volume items, so because of this, you will need a fairly substantial amount of money to do this. Some of these offers will take at least 20 to 30 mil to do a full buying limit of, so I'd recommend having at least 100 mil before attempting this. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started and we'll show you what it's all about. So first up here, let's define the characteristics we're looking for in this item. So we're looking for something around 1,000 GP to 10,000 GP. It's a pretty big range, but it is accurate. There's quite a few items that would be considered high volume and still 10,000 GP, but anything below 1,000 GP, you're most likely getting into just regular high volume items that are only ever going to have maybe a 5 to 10 GP margin on them. And that's what we're trying to avoid. By picking some of the more obscure high volume items, we're able to leave these offers in overnight and wake up to a completed offer slot, however, not much time wasted. For example, if you manage to get an 80 GP margin on a 10,000 buying limit overnight, that is potentially 800k you just made on a lesser known high volume flip. So the price is within a range of 1,000 GP to 10,000 GP. The next thing we want to look at is the buying and selling quantity per hour. Now that one is pretty important. If we go on to GE Tracker, we can have a look at a few different items here. Now I generally look at how many are bought and sold a day, because with some of these lesser known or obscure high volume items, a bunch of them could get dumped all at once, which would mess up the hourly average. So I would recommend going back and looking at the past 24 hours or even the past week. So for example, the Giant Seaweed, in the last hour it says it's traded 10,000. That looks like an item that's traded a lot, but if we go back to look at the month view and check how many are traded per day, generally only 10 to 20,000, which is a lot less than we would have assumed just by looking at the last hour. Now, how do you find obscure high volume items? That part is a little bit tricky. The most effective way I have found at doing it is just randomly looking up items that you would think would fit the criteria. Items that have a high buying limit, but you know are not used as much as other items. Other times I come over here onto the high volume page for GE Tracker. GE Tracker is a sponsor of mine. There will be a link in the description if you want to check it out. So occasionally under the high volume section, there will be something good, but not all the time. Other times I'll have a look at the GE limit section. For example, here we have the Ninja Impling Jar. It's a pretty expensive item, 25k, but still could be worth trying. A 560 GP margin is huge. Failed to Pill Teleports, Morton Teleports, those are all pretty much fitting the bill. Let's go ahead and check Ninja Implanes. Okay, so first up here, let's just check the margin and see if it's worth considering. It is around 400 GP. The next thing I'll generally do is just check the actual ROI or return on investment. With items around that price, it can be a little challenging to determine how much GP you're getting back for your investment. Okay, so the margin is exactly 423 GP, so we're getting a return of 1.71%, which is pretty reasonable. That's decent. So now that we've determined that it roughly fits our criteria, it is a bit expensive, but it has a huge buying limit of 18,000. Like, you need a ton of money to hit that. You need 442 mil to buy that, and you theoretically could get back 10 mil. Okay, so first up here, I like to go to the month graph and check how many are generally traded a day. So if we look at the buying and selling quantity, around 5,000 bought and sold a day. Probably a bit higher than that. So if you left an offer in overnight, you probably wouldn't want to go for more than 4,000 or 5,000. Next up here, we're looking at the price history. It seems to be on a bit of a downward trend right now. But then we'll go back to the day graph. We're looking at 24,701. Now that is a bit high for the last 24 hours. I would have preferred to buy it at around 23,300. However, if we go back to the week, it looks a little bit more optimistic. You can see that until, well, today pretty much, it was actually 25k each, and it just recently dropped down to 2324. Take into account those three different graphs, I would potentially go ahead and buy some of these items. So for example, maybe we want to do 2,000. 2,000 will probably take hours. However, we're looking to make back about 900K from that investment, which is really good, and it will not require us to manage the flip at all. We probably can just leave this in and they will slowly come through over the next couple of hours. Perfect for overnight flipping, or if you're just going to be gone for most of the day. So that was a bit expensive. Now for just different kind of categories of items I'll generally look for. Teleports are pretty good. Not the main teleport tablets, but some of the more obscure ones from Clue Scroll rewards or Arceus Spellbook teleport, stuff like that. GE Tracker does have a pretty nice feature where you can just type in a string and it'll show any items with that in its name. We'll come over here to the buying and selling quantity and sort by the highest, as a lot of these are pretty obscure. So coming down here, we can see that, well, the Barrows teleport has a 43 GP margin and a pretty high quantity, as well as a really good limit of 10,000. A nice other feature here is you can look at the ROI quickly. So for example, the Zulrah teleport does have a higher margin, but only has a 0.5% return on investment. Or if we look at the Barrows teleport, while it has a 43 GP margin, much more GP efficient. So then I'll just go through a lot of these items. So we'll go through Barrows teleports. So once again, we're going to check the margin quickly, making sure to not accidentally hit the Barrows teleport. The margin is around about 30 GP, so that's pretty good. A little bit less than what was shown on GE Tracker. That's most likely around a 1% return still. Okay, so we'll come over onto GE Tracker again, go to the month view. Around 10 to 20,000 traded a day is fitting within our price range of around 2,500, and it has a very high limit. Once again, it's good to look at the month view to look at longer term trends. Day graph, pretty even though. Okay, so we're looking to buy it for 25.77. That is a bit of a red flag here, as over the day, 25.77 is more of the high price. The lower price is around 25.22. Now that is a pretty good margin, and I might just try for that price. Worst case scenario, we're going to waste a little bit of time. However, best case scenario, we're looking to get a much better margin, and it's just generally a much safer way to do this. If you can see a graph that really looks like it's bouncing between 2 points for the buy and sell, like right here, for example, it's very consistent around 25.07, 25.09 at the bottom here over the last 8 to 10 hours. That's pretty much all of July 3rd so far. This is a very promising type of graph, just a very consistent buy and sell price over an extended period of time. So in this case, let's go ahead and buy the Barrows teleport for around, we'll do 25.15. The most efficient way to do this is to tailor the amount that you are buying based on the potential buying and selling quantities. The Barrows teleport does have a reasonable amount traded per hour, so we're going to go ahead and do 5,000. So going through a bunch of different teleports can be very powerful. Another really good one is unfinished items. If you just type UNF in the top for GE Tracker, it will show you a lot of different ones. That is going to include unfinished bolts, unfinished potions. Once again, you kind of want to come up here to the quantity and put the higher quantities at the top. The first item we're looking at here is the Cadentine potion. Definitely on an upward trend. The day graph is a bit wonked, not much has been traded today, but on average around 20 to 50,000 a day, which is a bit on the high end, but we'll go ahead and check the item anyway. Alright, so we're looking at a 40 GP margin for the Cadentine potion, which is excellent. I would highly recommend doing this item. We're looking to buy it for 1502, which we don't have much of data for today. However, if we look at the early morning and yesterday, 1502 into 1564 looked pretty possible, so I think we're going to do this item most definitely. And we're going to do the full buy-in limit for the Cadentine potion, and if you're doing this overnight, I would even consider maybe doing double the buy-in limit. So we're getting around a 40 GP margin, 20,000 will give us an 800k return for around 30 mil invested. That is quite good in my opinion. Now there are quite a few good items in here, but just to give more categories, another awesome category of items is actually Dragon Bolts. There's just so many different variations of them. If we go down here to like Dragonstone Dragon Bolt, 29 GP, or even the Opal Dragon Bolt. Okay, next up here we have the Opal Dragon Bolt. Sells around 15,000 to 20,000 a day. Pretty good. Pretty much right where we want it to be. Cost is around 1.2k, so pretty cheap. And the day graph looks really promising. You can see it's pretty much consistent all the way across at around 1180, something around there, and selling it for 1240. That's really, really nice. Okay, so we did a margin check here, a 60 GP margin. That is excellent. We're going to go do double the buy-in limit for that. So there we go, guys. We put in 4 different items that I personally think fit that kind of category of obscure high volume items. We're getting a 400 GP margin in this first one here, 30 on the second one, 60 on the third one, and 60 on the fourth one. Like really, really good margins. And that is how I personally find different items to put in. So now I'm going to show you a few completed flips that I have done over the last a couple months that I have had a lot of success with. So these are some flips I did for my 1GP to Twisted Boat series, so a bit of a sneak peek. That episode should be out on Friday. So again, we're sticking to the criteria of around 1000 GP up to 10,000, although it's on the cheaper end because I don't have as much money on that account, so I couldn't really afford the higher end obscure high volume items. First up here, we have a pretty nice flip on the Dragon Bolts. We were able to do 25,000 of them, and we got a 16 GP margin. Netting us around 400k, not the best, but still pretty good considering I just did that overnight. Next up here, we did the Avanto Potion Unfinished, actually for a 400k profit. The margin we got on this is insane. We flipped 4,600 of them for around a 300 GP margin. My offer slot was a little bit messed up here, but we ended up getting 1.2 million profit from the Avanto Potion, which is insane. We got pretty lucky on this one, but still you can see the power of some of these more obscure items. There are larger margin swings like that, and if you get on the lucky end of it, you can make a ton of money off of only like 4,000 of these Avanto Potions and a very minimal amount invested. Okay, a few days later we did Dragon Javelin Heads. We ended up getting a 30 GP margin on those, so we got about 300k in profit. Again, pretty good considering it's only a 900 GP item. We did Baby Dragon Bones. Now these could kind of be considered regular high volume items, but they're still on the more obscure end of high volume. Most people aren't really using Baby Dragon Bones, so we were able to get almost a 40 GP margin on those, netting us around 300k overall. We actually got a 250 GP margin on Onyx Dragon Bolt E's. Those are very expensive at around 10,000 GP each, and we only flipped 1,000 of them but made 250k right there. If you had enough time and money to do the full buying limit, that could be worth 2.5 million profit. A few more example items here. We did the Lantidine Potion Unfinished for about a 60 GP margin more or less, which netted us around 250k in profit off of only around 4.4k of the Lantidine Potions. We had another good flip on the Onyx Dragon Bolt E's, and this time we got 3,000 of them. We only got a 70 GP margin on that one, so only netting us around 200k or something like that. And my last example item here is actually Avanto. Avanto isn't traded a lot. I would say it's in between just a regular high volume item and a more obscure one. But I got some really good flips on Avanto this week, getting a 40 GP margin on Avanto right now, which would net us around 400k. So those are some example items. There are a ton out there, and I think they are great for those who are not wanting to actively flip as much. Maybe you're going to sleep and you want to put something in overnight, or even if you're going to be gone for maybe a full day or two, finding one of these items, putting in for a few times the buying limit is a very effective way to have your money still be working, because there's not really any other great options unless you're going to go for some speculative investments. Doing a high volume item isn't really going to be worth your time, as it's going to come through very quickly. High margin items can work, but again, they are more gated by their buying limit, and personally I find them to be a little bit more risky, so I think items like these are a very good compromise with time efficiency and profit in mind. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed the video or found it useful. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them below. I'll try to get back to you. Thanks for watching guys, and I will see you next time.